David, thanks so much for taking time to give us your best thinking today. We often hear about the controversies that happen when there's significant decisions made around the use of technology. And so what we want to do is to highlight executive leaders with whom we work who have made or in the process of making important technology decisions. And we want to share this with other people on our, through a vehicle on our website, but also through social media, and just to hear your thinking about how you got there and the sort of challenges that you face and that sort of thing. So will you help us understand some of the decisions that Iradell-Statesville made regarding technology as it relates to the blended learning initiative?
Well, one thing, when we received the Race to Top grant, we knew we were charged with a lot of responsibility and using it. The one thing we wanted to say from the very beginning is this was not a technology initiative. This is a learning initiative. This was a transformation of what's happening in the classroom. And technology is just a tool in which that can be used to achieve that and can be used better than we have. So we actually, for the first year, did not even talk about device. Mm-hmm. We chose purposefully to say we need to talk about what we want it to look like. So it's been in the past, we've had models where we have a computer lab that teachers plan to go use the computer lab when they have their turn. Instead of when does the technology fit the instruction, they made the instruction fit the technology. And so we want to make sure we have a better idea of what blended learning look like for us. What do we want to see it do, so that we can then choose the appropriate device and technology to make that happen.
When you were actually making the decision about what device, what were some of those challenges that you faced?
Some of the challenges work around what preconceptions do people have about device, because you have people that like one type of device versus another type of device, and just because of their personal preference, they have no real reason or data to back that.
Yeah.
What have we done in the past, and how has that worked? What is out there that we haven't really used yet? What will that be different? We also are looking at technology, especially in the middle school realm. What would be the more appropriate device? Tablets have come a long way. And so do we need tablet devices or do we need laptop devices? What is it? And then it's also hard to tell which is the adult problem, which is the kid problem. Because the adults can't create on the tablets as well as these kids can just jump on and they're creating without any problem. So trying to figure out, okay, where is the struggle that we have? The teacher being able to know how to use this effectively, or the student using it.
Yeah.
So those are different types of devices and where would it be. We pretty much figured right now in the high school realm where tablets aren't powerful enough yet for high school, but middle school where really we're trying to struggle with.
Yeah, yeah. What were some of the factors that really drove your decision?
The driving criteria were, one, how will it work with your day-to-day function? How will it work with current infrastructure? Will you be able to do what you need to be doing? What is the access you have on the internet? Different devices have fallbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more of comfortableness because it's not easy to use. Because it's not easy to use, they're not going to use it. And what tools will be available, I think, were a lot of the driving factors.
Wait, and whose involvement did you get along the way with the series of decisions that you made with the Blended Learning Initiative?
We got involved with parents, teachers, students, support staff, administration, and technology.
Okay.
We included all of them in the decision process.
Who actually made the final decision?
The final decision for what device was made by our Board of Education.
Okay, all right.
What we did is we brought to, this is what the data showed, but all 120 people clearly stated. We showed that data to the board saying, this is what percentage said this about this device. And made the decision, I wouldn't say easier, but at least clearer.
I'm interested to know what were some of those those end goals or outcomes that you wanted the blended learning initiative to accomplish?
There are 4 goals that are part of the initiative. One is individualized student instruction. And outcomes on that are classroom walkthroughs. We do classroom walkthroughs periodically, which have criteria which we look for. Some of those look fors would be as technology being used in the hands of students or teachers. As a traditional model, the teacher has the technology, the student is watching. So what kind of interaction? The typical measurements you'd have with that also with in the core scores, how testing took place. We also looked at how blended learning is not just technology, but how much are they using as far as focus groups, small group, to try to change the way instruction is given. Be able to individualize that a little bit more. Which is in the next other goal is revolutionized instruction, which dealt a lot with where the technology being used and how is it being used. We also want to cultivate high quality teachers through that, and the last one is on using data more in decision making for students and what's going on. The idea was with all this technology you can get a lot of real time data on your students. But you need to do something with that data. So those are kind of the 4 goals, and the measurements are kind of what go after the schools.
Yeah, well, those are really ambitious goals, and so often what we see in our work with different school districts is that people establish the outcomes and make tough decisions, but the devil is in the details of the rollout. So talk a little bit about some of the challenges and obstacles that you experience with the implementation.
The challenges, like you said, the devil's in kind of the details, is even though we have 120 people represented, and we did more surveys and beyond that, some people it doesn't matter until it matters, and so decisions aren't even made. Now they want to bring up all the reasons why it should have done it this way. And so making sure that we address those concerns. The concerns are concerns that either we have to identify how we can do it differently, or that it's not to do it possible. I also felt that getting complete community buy-in was a little more difficult. And I think in some sections of our community, getting them to understand that this is good for students, that it's something that's needed for students, and that it may be different than the way they learn, but it's the way that we need to get them to prepare for the business world that we have today.
I guess you have some people that still want to hold on to those textbooks, as the primary source of learning.
They do, and we still have some teachers that want to do that.
Yeah, sure.
I think in implementation, that was the first thing. The rest of it, I think, was more just logistics.
Okay.
The size of what they're doing, the size staff we have, and getting that implemented. The bumps that we saw were what you normally see if you put 12,000 devices that we're rolling out. So if you have 12,000 students crowdsourcing, they're going to find ways. And so finding that balance becomes somewhat difficult. And then I think it's just, there's so many, we have 16 schools that we're implementing this with. So each school has a different take on what they need to do and what they need to have. So we need to be flexible enough to meet those without just being rigid.
So often the challenge when you're implementing something as significant as what you are with the blended learning initiative is getting people to change how they do things. So have there been surprises with getting particularly teachers to change? And you sort of alluded to that. And then what has been successful in working with some of those people that were a little bit slower to change the methodologies they've been using for many years?
Yeah. A lot of grants that you have to do to get away from that mentality into the why we're doing this for kids so they're prepared and better able to form a global community. That I think helps greatly. Now, there's some of now we can debate about what the why is, and that's where it comes in. And I think having leadership on board and the blended learning coaches were having someone just-in-time training, able to go in your classroom, able to answer your questions. And this is a model that we have done in the past with instructional facilitators as well.
Right.
The support we have at the school level right now is they have a blended learning coach and an instructional facilitator.
Yeah, that's
a lot of support there in this change management. A lot of the surveys we put out, we put surveys to teachers through the initiative to kind of gauge where they are, and we try to individualize the PD to them, because even though we're talking about individualized instruction for students, we want to model that on our side. So instead of doing the normal PD where I call the shotgun approach, where you just get everyone in the room and shoot, that we actually target those that need help in certain areas and make sure that they're getting what they need.
So David, if you had one or two key pieces of advice for another district that's just beginning something around blended learning, what would that advice be? Lessons learned that you'd like to share with someone else?
I think be sure to engage your community.
Okay.
Because they need to understand where you're going. And it's not just your parents, because your parents may understand it, because they're not the only voters.
Yeah.
The business leaders, and I think earlier you can get to them to understand the change and transformation you make. Because when, as a parent, I see this happen where things are being done differently in the classroom. So when my child comes home and says, I don't understand how to do this, I don't understand how to help them.
Yeah.
They need to know that their child's in good hands and it is moving forward, and they know that it's the right way to go. The other thing is to make sure that we have clear communication channels put together, that you're addressing the different stakeholders and you're keeping current with them. I think also coming to an understanding of what you want blended learning to be, what you want the definition to be. Do let the instruction drive the initiative.
Right. Well, the fact that you didn't even talk about devices that whole first year, it's all about the changes with teaching and learning. I mean, you really walked the talk as a district. So, well, it's very impressive what you've done, and like I said, we brag about Iradell-Statesville when we work with other school districts, and are so happy that things are moving along in a positive direction with the blended learning initiative. And I really appreciate you spending a little bit more than 20 minutes today. This has been very helpful for us, and I think it will be for other leaders as well.